Here. My name is Ahmed Rahab, A-H-M-E-D, R-E-H-A-B, Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations Chicago chapter, and we're joined today by ACLU Illinois, the Office of Calvin Resnick, Syrian Community Network, and Syrian Forum USA. And we're here to comment on the hearings which will begin tomorrow in the Trump versus Hawaii Supreme Court case that is discussing the Muslim ban. It is a Muslim ban, it's still a Muslim ban, that's what we're calling it. It began as a promise, a bizarre promise on the campaign trail by Donald Trump to ban Muslims until we figure out what's going on. The first iteration of the ban was blatant. There were attempts thereafter to tone it down after it was struck down by lower courts. That second attempt was also struck down by lower courts at the appellate and federal level. And then the third iteration, which attempted even further to hide the unconstitutionality and the immorality of the ban, was issued and still struck down by the courts. We're here today to say that these policies are not only unconstitutional in our view and un-American, but they have real impact on communities. They tear families apart. They target innocent families who have done nothing wrong by the admission of the government. These are people that the government is not claiming are on some watch list or have committed some kind of crime or are, engaging in suspicious activity. These are people whose only crime, quote unquote, was to be born into the wrong religion or into the wrong nationality. They're being targeted simply based on where they were born. That isn't national security. That isn't the way America ought to run its business, and that does nothing but catch innocent people in this quagmire, hurting families and tearing them apart. Every day we see human anguish at Chicago O'Hare and other airports around the country. We still have the TAP project, the Traveler Assistance Project, that Sufyan Sohail and others are running on behalf of CAIR-Chicago. And this is an assistance program on the ground. And every day we hear about situations where people are detained for long hours under very gruesome conditions, many turned away, even though they have their proper visas in order, even though they have all their paperwork, even though they've done nothing wrong, simply because of the dark cloud that hangs above us all with this Muslim ban. So our call to the Supreme Court is to strike this down, to salvage what we can of our image as Americans, but also to bring back the American way of dealing with national security. There is no national security measure in these policies. No terrorists are captured or identified through these random policies that are nothing but a white dragnet on an entire community based on nationality and religion. And you'll hear more about this as we go along. One last point. CAIR has issued its 2018 Civil Rights Report yesterday. And in the report is data-based evidence as to the toll that these policies are taking. In the past, hate crimes were always the #1 category in terms of the number of cases reported to us. Now, cases of harassment by CPB and other issues by government agencies take the top spot, which is saying a lot given that hate crimes have a lot lower threshold to be committed, random individuals committing acts of hate against other people. That is now the second category, and you can see the full report on our website with all the data that is there. I'll just quote for you a small portion of it. So the Civil Rights Report finds that federal government agencies have instigated more than a third of all anti-Muslim bias incidents in 2017. Of these, 464 incidents were related to the Trump administration's unconstitutional Muslim ban executive orders. The new report, titled Targeted, also shows a 17% increase in anti-Muslim bias incidents and a 15% increase in hate crimes in 2017 over the previous year. I now turn it over to Calvin Resnick with USOCL.
My name is Calvin, K-A-L-V-A-N, Resnick, R-E-S-N-I-C-K. I'm a partner at Hughes Sokol, Peters, Resnick, and Div Law Firm in Chicago. I have practiced immigration and nationality law for the past 45 years in my hometown of Chicago, defending immigrants, uniting families, helping American employers recruit the best talent for American businesses and making sure American universities can recruit the best students, the best researchers, and the best professors. I want to tell you what Trump's travel ban is doing to my client communities. It is separating U.S. citizens from family members. For example, U.S. citizens who marry a citizen from one of the banned countries are being barred from bringing their spouses to the United States. Adult U.S. citizens who want to bring their aging parents to join them in the United States can no longer obtain immigrant visas for their mothers and fathers. U.S. citizens cannot even immigrate their sons and daughters if they are citizens of banned countries. The travel ban is against our family values as a nation and must be overturned. The travel ban is also hurting American employers who cannot recruit the top talent they need to remain competitive in the global economy without first considering whether the talent is banned under the travel proclamation. The travel ban is preventing American universities from recruiting the best students, researchers, and professors without first having to consider their nationalities. Last, on a personal note, I want to speak about the danger of the Muslim travel ban for not just our Muslim neighbors, but for all of us. I am a proud Jewish American. My grandparents and great-grandparents fled anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe for the safety of the United States and Canada. But many of my cousins and millions of European Jews were not so lucky. On account of the national origin quotas passed by Republican-controlled Congresses after World War I to restrict immigration from Italy, Greece, Poland, and the other countries of Eastern and Southern Europe, Jews fleeing the Holocaust were not welcome in our country in the 1930s and 40s, and many, like my own cousins, were murdered in the concentration camps of Europe. Never again as now, Trump's travel ban must be overturned.
Thank you, Colin. Next, we'll hear from Suzanne Sahu, who is with Syrian Community Network, about the impact on communities.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Akras, S-U-Z-A-N-N-E, A-K-H-R-A-S. I'm the founder and executive director at the Syrian Community Network, a nonprofit organization founded here in Chicago in 2015, and we have chapters in San Diego, Atlanta, and in Phoenix. I'm also a proud board member of CAIR-Chicago, and I'm an American of Syrian descent, a Muslim, a woman speaking on behalf of the Syrian refugee community and standing for anyone who is affected by the Muslim travel ban. We are deeply disappointed that President Trump placed a ban on immigrants and refugees from Muslim-majority countries. President Trump also lowered the numbers of refugees resettled in the U.S. from 110,000 to 45,000, the lowest number in 50 years. We have so far, to this day, we've only resettled 8,500 refugees. That's less than half of what we have pledged. What we are seeing is the dismantling of the refugee resettlement program in the U.S., of refugee resettlement organizations dropping critical programs and letting go of staff due to the fact that we do not have new refugees to serve. This goes against American values and humanitarian principles. If the travel ban were to bar immigrants from entering the country that was built by the premise of being open to the people who are fleeing persecution and oppression, and just to give you an idea, Syrian refugees have to go through the most stringent vetting process, and it takes about 24 months, sometimes longer, to be received or accepted to become a refugee in the United States. The Syrian crisis has entered its 7th year with no end in sight. Today, over 65 million people are displaced worldwide. Close to 6 million Syrians have registered as refugees. 1 in 4 refugees across the globe are Syrian refugees. Only 18,000 out of the 5 or 6 million registered Syrian refugees have been resettled in the United States. That's a very low number. And almost all of them are families with women-led households and many young children. And they are embraced, let me tell you, they are embraced by every faith community here in Chicago and across the United States. Refugees are fleeing oppression and terrorism, and they want to start a new life in the land of freedom and opportunity. Refugees deserve our sympathy and support, and they are assets to our communities. Family after family that I spoke to have recalled asking for their loved ones to come here as refugees, and they're waiting for them. If left unchecked, the Trump's policy would keep families apart and prevent thousands of refugees from finding safety in the United States. This is not who we are. we call on the Supreme Court to overturn President Trump's decision and to stand with the refugee and immigrant community and to stand with our undocumented brothers and sisters. As Americans, we are standing up for our principles and values, and I hope that you will join us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Next, we'll hear from Ed Yonka with the ACLU.
Thank you. My name is Ed E.D. Yonka, Y-O-H-N-K-A. I'm the Director of Communications and Public Policy for the American Civil Liberties Union of Illinois. The ACLU has proudly stood with the folks here and thousands of others across the country to fight this ban from the very moment that it was put in place. There are two things that have been revealed in this process. The first is that the Trump administration has clearly sought to write anti-Muslim bias into our laws and into our practices with regards to immigration. That is what this ban does. And the second thing we've seen is the importance of the courts in functioning as an independent body to review and to interpret the Constitution of the United States. Every single court at the trial level and at the appellate level that has looked at this ban has found it to be unconstitutional because it does make a judgment about people based on their religion. And how do we know that? We know that because the president has told us so repeatedly. He has never been shy in any tweet or public statement, and his tweets are public statements, about the fact that this is a ban that is based on anti-Muslim bias. And so what we see tomorrow is an important step in a process where the Supreme Court can finally bring this nightmare to an end. Join all of the other courts who have acted thus far and strike this ban down as unconstitutional once and for all. It is critical that the court act, and it's critical that they act quickly, because one of the things that has gone, that you've heard a little bit about, but I think has gone unnoticed in the public, is that when the Supreme Court allowed this ban to go into effect partially, what we've seen is real harm done to families. We've seen people not be able to celebrate weddings with their family members. We've seen people not be able to continue their education. And we've even seen instances where loved ones have died without, or had someone die without being able to say goodbye to them. That's not American. Neither is judging people on the basis of their religion, and neither is discrimination. And it is time for the Supreme Court to step up and once and for all end this ban. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. It's absolutely true. And I would add that on top of all of this, there's a false sense of national security that is being touted to the people, this placebo effect. So I think that's just as dangerous as anything else. We have also with us Yasser Tabara, who was a previous executive director here at CAIR-Chicago, founding executive director, and was before that in charge of dealing with the very first registration program during the Bush years. He'll tell you more about that. He's currently with the Syrian Forum, USA.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, CAIR-Chicago. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yasser.